Welcome everyone to our latest episode of CRE Unplugged. I am Nadine, and as always, I am joined by my incredible co-host, Ryan Elazari. How are you, Ryan?
I'm doing great, Nadine. Thank you so much. And, for our audience members right now that are watching this on YouTube, no, we did not call each other to color coordinate. This was all by accident.
Yeah.
But yeah, the black suits you, Nadine.
Thank you. Likewise to you, my friend. We're syncing up apparently in every facet of our lives. Yeah. What was that movie with, was it Greg Kinnear and Matt Damon where like twins, Siamese twins attached to each other or something? You remember that?
I'm feeling like we're turning into that.
We're getting into that. Daniela, yeah. I'm so sorry, Daniela. Daniela's an incredible wife who I adore tremendously. We are fresh off a trip to Viva Las Vegas. We were out there last week at the absolutely incredible conference Blueprint. First time for you and I. And we were there because we took the show on the road, which was amazing.
We took the show on the road. Nadine did an amazing job out there. We had some incredible guests. We can't wait to highlight them. Brad Hargraves from Thesis Driven, Adam Pittenger from Moved, Sharon Ayalon from Urban Mix. She was part of the NAIOP Prop Tech competition. We brought her on. We got to chat with her, which was great. Daniel from JLL. He's VP in terms of AI and integration.
So yeah, it's great.
Yeah. So really loved it.
I got to start off, man. You and I go to a lot of conferences, right? We go to a lot of conferences, both the traditional built world side for commercial real estate and prop tech. And I have to say, this was one of the best conferences I have been to in quite some time. Kudos to Martin Kelly and his entire team for curating on every level, right? The speeches were great, the talks were great, the people were great, the camaraderie, the energy. We also hosted a roundtable discussion as well, which you did an incredible job gathering people for that. Seriously, kudos to you.
Yeah, thank you. And, our roundtable was focusing on technology and innovation and how it's affecting the data center and the industrial space. And I thought it was really incredible to get all the insights from our panelists that we had on. And one thing that really struck a chord to me is we had Shahar from FarrowPoint, and he was talking about, AI integration is, the way that it's being implemented and the way that it's being used. There's still a learning curve, not just from the older side of their team, but also the younger side. So if people are worried about how to embrace tech, how they're going to be able to use it, I thought it was incredibly fascinating to hear that it's hit, it really hits all age classes. It's not just one. So people should really, embrace it, look into it. It's really interesting how the electric grid and the power source is affecting the industrial and data center sector so much. We really got into the depths of that. So that was incredibly interesting. What did you think, Nadine?
Oh, that was probably I'd say the data center sapping up the energy, right? And not enough energy right now, and how that's going to play out in the future was probably my biggest takeaway, and hearing firsthand from the people around our table how they're trying to navigate around that, and how they just can't forecast far enough in certain instances. So that was very interesting to me. We also saw some former CRE Unplugged guests out there. Lisa Picard had a fantastic panel with Jamie Hadari from Industrious and Nick Romito from BTS about the future of office. Lisa was out there, giving her wisdom about the future of office and how we need to create workplace resorts, right? We really need to put humanity back at the center of office to really get people to want to come back in. And Bob Gillespie, we saw our good friend Bob Gillespie, who was there with the Second Century Venture team as well. So it was great to see some friends of CRE Unplugged out there as well.
Yeah, and to talk about the future of office with Lisa Picard, she made this point about how resident managers and engineers, what they should be doing in their office buildings is every morning coming into the lobby, greeting the tenants, making them feel like they're at home, making them feel that they're wanted.
Yep.
And it's such a simple thing, but it really resonates, and it really struck a chord with me because I was thinking about that, on all levels, and I thought that that was such a brilliant point. So Lisa, we love her. We think
Yeah.
she's great, and yeah, all the talks that we got to listen to at Blueprint were fantastic, and we're so happy that we went. And yeah, thank you to Martin Kelly for curating an amazing event.
Yeah. One final shout out to our good friends, Xander Geronimo's from Proda, Betsy Reed from Starwood, and Jen Tyndall from Grace Hill, who also had a really great panel on the future of data, the critical role of data going forward as well. So shout out to our friends as well. Ryan loved Blueprint so much. Ryan stayed in Las Vegas for a few days after, and I'm so glad that he made it back. But you were sending pictures. You had a great time. It seems like. Tell me about what you did when you stayed behind.
I stayed behind. I invited my brother-in-law to join our roundtable, but then he ended up staying with me for a couple of nights, and we got to see the Eagles at the Sphere, which I have to say, if there's one thing you have to do in 2025 is to go to the Sphere. It blew my mind. Like my expectations were at one point, but it just exceeded that. It was really amazing. And I'm not that big of an Eagles fan, but I thought just the whole experience was just bar none amazing. And I definitely recommend it. And yeah, I did some clubbing, went back to my early 20s when I was a college kid. So got to experience that again. I'm definitely not made for that world anymore. And I got to go to some really nice restaurants. I went to the Delilah Lounge at the Wynn, and the SW is a steakhouse next to what they call the lake. So yeah, my Vegas experience was pretty great. I haven't been there in like 12 years, so I got to experience it as a mature adult. So it was wonderful to experience it in that way, and not lose my shirt at the end.
No, you really kept it together. I was very proud of you. You love Las Vegas, don't you?
I do. I do.
No,
I'm all about the bright lights and
I know.
the chaos.
I know. And I could take it or leave it. It's not my favorite place on earth, but I have to tell you, this was probably one of the best times I've ever had. And I think it was because of everybody we ran into at the conference, really. The energy was just bar none. We laughed so hard. We learned so much. And that's, I feel like, what these conferences should be like. Yeah, did you hit up any buffets? You stay behind?
I got to go to the Wynn Buffet. I'm a big fan of buffets. My wife always says I'm the variety man, so it's like the perfect place for me.
You are. I remember now when I dinner with
Yeah.
you guys a couple of months ago. You are the
Yeah.
variety. I love a good buffet. Who doesn't love a good
Yeah, of
buffet?
course. Yeah.
Oh, the Wynn buffet is beautiful, man. Love it.
And to feed my brother-in-law, he needs about 5 to 6 pounds of food. So it was the perfect place
Seriously?
for the two
Such
of
a
us. Yeah.
slender guy. Oh, but he's young. He's still got that
He's
mentality.
young and he loves his red meat, so it was good for him.
Oh,
Nat, if you're hearing, that's a shout out to you.
Nat, I hate you, knowing that you consume that much food and stay slender as you were. But anyway, no, I don't hate you. No, amazing time. We can't wait to go back to Blueprint next year as well. Truly, what an amazing event. But we've got another one coming up in November where we're taking CRE Unplugged on the road again, which will be CRE Tech. So we're a proud marketing partner of CRE Tech as well. So we'll be going there in the middle of November for New York Real Estate Tech Week. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, that will be a lot of fun.
Awesome. So I think personally, one of my favorite parts of doing this show is when Ryan and I get together and get to decide who we're going to interview next. And for today's show, we talked a lot about community, pretty apropos for coming off of Blueprint last week. And so community is a word that we're hearing a lot about in the real estate sector these days, whether it's office owners creating it to get workers back in the office or multifamily owners creating communities for their residents.
Speaking of multifamily, community is no longer a luxury, but a necessity as people are looking for more ways to connect, especially after COVID. Multifamily experts are constantly trying to keep their finger on the pulse of the industry's needs, which is no small feat.
No, it's not. And so today's guest saw this need for experts to be connected and collaborate. And in response to that need, created an online community to do just that.
Should we get on with it?
Let's do it, Ryan.
And with that, I'm excited to introduce our guest, Brent Williams, Chief Insider at Multifamily Insiders. Brent, thank you so much for joining us today.
It is my pleasure. Happy to be here.
Welcome, Brent. It's so good to see you.
You too?
Brent, last week I saw you in Vegas. Looked like you have some color back on your face. Tell us about your experience at Blueprint.
Yeah, I loved that conference. It was amazing, actually, how many people proactively came up to me and said how well run it was. And that's not always the case. So it was, I think overall, the production quality was fantastic. The energy that they are able to create with that space is really something special. Of course, it helped that there was a half-point rate cut in the middle. So I think people were also jazzed about that. But in general, though, the event itself was really the structure of it was really interesting, and how the pieces were put together to facilitate people, connecting and running into each other. And also, it probably wasn't so big that you felt that you were trekking across, all over the place trying to get from one session to another. Just the size was really spot on. So I loved it. It was great.
Yeah, we agree. It was our first time there as well. And we go to a lot of conferences, Ryan and I, and we always talk about the caliber and the quality of the conferences after. And honestly, I think Blueprint just hit it out of the park. It was tremendous. The energy, the networking, the camaraderie was amazing. The puppies didn't hurt, right? They had
Right.
the puppies that we could hang out with. That was nice. But Brent, not only were you an attendee, but you were on two panels and you led one roundtable at Blueprint. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Yeah. So what's so funny about that is, okay, so our first time with this event, but last year I heard so much buzz. I was like, well, let me reach out and see if we can do something together. So I talked with Martin, and who is an amazing person, by the way. And so we ended up creating the Apartment Strategy Symposium, which was kind of an event within an event. So it was the first two panels of Blueprint that were the start of the multifamily track within the event. So we had, I really wasn't on stage much. I kind of introduced, but then I really handed off to the experts. And so we had two great panels on today's multifamily and then the future of multifamily, because the industry is changing so rapidly. And then, so we had a just great response there. And then we had a separate roundtable, which I really liked the way they do the roundtables also. We curated some really great people to do a deep dive into, the resident experience when it comes to technology. And so, yeah, some really great conversations there too.
Brent, can you give us one key point that was made on your roundtable?
Oh, that's a great question. I would say that the challenge right now, I think, with resident technologies is that there are multiple technologies that are interacting with the resident, but they're doing so independently. And so it's hard to have a cohesive message when you have one piece that's giving them a notice about, rent payment or something like that, or another one might be talking about the renewal process. And so they're really, at the end of the day, I think there needs to be some layer over all of these technologies that is a communications hub, so that they can go into that one spot and see every bit of communication that's been sent out to the residents. And maybe some of the more the platforms that are fully integrated, like it's a bundled solution, maybe those have those. I'm not quite sure, but that was one of the pain points that I heard.
My sister just closed on a house in Miami with her husband, and she came to me and said, Nadine, there was a login. And she had to create 6 different logins, right? For the mortgage, for the title documents, for the closing, right? And I'm listening to this. I'm like, oh, this is a good problem to be solved. I mean, but when you think about it, and I'm just going to use a closing on a house as an example, which is already a bit of a stressful time to begin with. And then to have the technology kind of add in, this increased layers of friction. I can absolutely see that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Brent, you have a great path in your career. Can you tell us about that, and also how you got the inspiration to start Multifamily Insiders?
Yeah. So I started in finance, which has absolutely or almost nothing to do with what I do now. I think that my career is a lot like others, where it's like you start with one thing and then you kind of find your different passions in different ways, and you, if you just follow where you see the opportunity, it ends up leading you hopefully in the right direction. So I was in finance, living in apartment communities, and I'd moved to a different city, so I didn't know anybody, and so I was just hopping from one concession to another, and I kept thinking to myself, if I had one really good friend at this property, I would most likely stay. And when I started doing the math and going, okay, how much are they losing because I'm now going to some other concession to some other property? It was probably pretty significant. So I decided I'm going to get into the multifamily industry, and I ended up I wanted to kind of get my feet wet to understand how the industry worked. So I actually worked at an apartment community for about a year, and then I started up a couple businesses. One was a social network for apartment communities, so residents could actually get to know each other that way. That had its own hurdles. That was at that time, MySpace was the big dog,
Wow.
and so that dates me.
Old school.
And the real challenge there was, especially at that time, the powers that be, the decision makers, they had no idea what social networking was, and how especially it could be leveraged for their properties. They didn't know. And so I launched Multifamily Insiders as a way to facilitate a professional social networking opportunity so that they could use it themselves. And then once they use it, they could understand how we could kind of loop back around and talk about the residents. But frankly, it just took off. There was nothing at that time. There was no place where they could go and interact with people online. If you wanted to go educate yourself, you had to go to a conference or a local apartment association meetup to have that conversation. And so this was something new that did not exist before that. So we were right time, right place, and it just took off. So we just never went back to the original idea.
What year was this, Brent, that you founded it?
Yeah, so we initially launched as a LinkedIn group in 2008.
Wow.
And then late that year, we launched our own platform because I didn't want to be beholden to LinkedIn. And so we launched our own platform, and then the site crashed, the backup did not work. And so we had to restart from scratch, and I had to go out to every single person again and be like, will you please join our community yet again?
Wow.
And but you know what? It just goes to show that we had the right idea, because people, they jumped right back on board and they were like, no problem. And we had a bigger launch, the second launch. So it all turned out well, but I thought it was over. I thought it was like, this is done, and now we have better systems in place now. So hopefully we'll
on the radar screen. Amazing. Brent, what does the next 12 months look like for Multifamily Insiders?
So right now we have a couple of big tentpole events. There are virtual conferences called Multifamily Demo Day. And that's basically a spotlight of what technologies out there in multifamily. And those are twice a year. So what we're doing now in the next 12 months is we are expanding the conversations. So that event is very broad, technology speaking. So what we're doing is we're doing deep dives on specific categories where we're going to really talk about fraud, for example. That's going to be our first one. We're going to talk about resident engagement apps and platforms. And so we can really have a chance to really dig deep into each of these topics and have some really great conversations.
What I love about these demo days that you have is that it really gives a place for owners and for property managers to kind of see these technologies like firsthand, and they're not being burdened by vendors and suppliers coming to them at conferences and saying, hey, listen to us. I think it's such a great way for you to be able to showcase these technologies that they probably wouldn't even give a chance, but because you're having this demo day, they have an open mind.
Yeah, what's really neat about it is, number one, it's opt-in, so that one of the big things you hear about conferences is that you are just overwhelmed with emails afterwards, and nobody wants that. Like, it's not good for anybody. It's not good for the suppliers either. I mean, what it does is it washes out all the actual meaningful conversations. So we structured it where we have, people can hop in, hop out, see the things that they find interesting, and then when they want more information, then we connect the dots. And so it's worked out really well where it's respectful of the audience,
Mm.
where and it's also very transparent what it is. It's not a bait and switch. It's not a, hey, we're going to pretend talk about thought leadership, but really we're trying to pitch you something. This is I'm going to go look at demos, and because I want to see what's out there. And then if I find zero, it's nothing there that suits me, which is probably pretty rare, but still, then they're not going to get any emails from anybody. And so they can feel confident in that. So it's worked out really well the way we structured it.
I've heard a lot of buzz. I think you you guys recently had one, correct?
Yeah, we had one in August, and then our next
Yes.
one is in February.
Yeah, a lot of excitement I saw and a lot of positive buzz on LinkedIn. You just mentioned that if owners wish to learn more afterwards, you guys kind of help connect the dots after the fact. How do you guys help facilitate connecting the participants in between demo days?
So we do as transparently as possible. So for example, when a company's demoing, we just ask the audience, hey, would you like them to send you more information? And so it's really simple that way. It's like, yes, I want them to send me an expanded demo or whatever the case may be. Even if they miss the event, we have ways to connect the dots where I say, hey, maybe, do you want to rewatch a demo? Or did you miss a demo that you really wanted to see, but schedules didn't align? Then we can have the supplier send you their demo if you missed it. So there's just different ways that we can kind of facilitate that.
Excellent.
That's fantastic, and it really goes to an article that you posted out there called the 2024 Technology Adoption Report. And what I love about it is it kind of shows what technology has been implemented by property managers and owners. So I would really like to know what are the biggest barriers to tech adoption, and how can that be overcome?
I think there's several. I think one of the big challenges is that when you think about a lot of the people who are developing tech solutions right now, there's a lot that are coming from outside the industry. They have a tech background. And so the way they view technology may be different than companies in the space already, because the companies in the space, they're property management companies. And they are being asked to expand their core competency to understanding how to leverage tech in their offering. And so the organizational structure of companies, especially mom and pops, our industry is very fragmented, right? And so we have a ton of smaller operators, and they don't have the resources for a giant IT team, right? And so I think there's a disconnect in how their organizational structure is set up, and then also what they're being asked to do, how to evaluate all these different technology suppliers when, a lot of people probably don't have any clue what they should be asking on a demo. Like, what are the really insightful questions you need to ask to tease out what's the best solution for you? And so that's a big challenge right there. I think the integration challenge is always a big issue. The number one question we get on demo day is, are you integrated with XYZ company? So that's a real big issue. I think it's interesting because whenever I see a new property management software pop up, it's usually kind of from a bundled perspective. Like, they have their core accounting system, they have these pieces already put together. I'm surprised I have not seen a company come in there as a framework where there's essentially no functionality except for understanding how the data is stored, so that any then system that gets integrated can access that same data. I'm surprised that just doesn't exist. And so if anybody's ready to do that, let me know, because I think it's a fascinating topic to kind of think about it from a pull back from accounting as the core and think about it as data and notifications and that those, like the email notification systems, like there's some core things that you can put there and have everything else integrate into that system, if that makes any sense.
Totally. Vendor integration. We were just hearing last week when we were interviewing guests at Blueprint, Adam Pittenger, founder of moved.com, which assists on moving day. Same thing. Vendor integration, I think, is one of the biggest pain points that we hear out there. And to your point, Brent, that Everyone's inability to communicate effectively between, the two, whether the vendors and the tech solutions, and then the built world. And like you said, especially in multifamily, a lot of them are mom and pop solutions who want to stay ahead of the curve, but just don't know where to begin. It's a big problem. And so I'm very happy to see you guys flushing those out, at least at demo day a bit, moving the needle on that, which I think is fantastic.
Brent, let's go back to the whole community aspect. How do you see technology enhancing community engagement at properties?
So going back to my history, so we had this social network for apartment communities, and there were layers of challenges to that company. One of which I did not foresee as coming from outside the industry, that, I saw they had like community events, right? You have your summer parties and that sort of thing. So I thought that was the goal, right? I did not realize that a lot of companies, especially back then, they wanted everything to be chaperoned. And so the idea of residents talking to each other in an unmoderated way would be terrifying. Nobody wants to talk about increases in rents or the car break-in or whatever, right? And so I think some of those concerns, which I think are definitely valid, a social network can go negative, right? I think they still exist in today's world. So I think it's a fascinating subject because I think there's so much opportunity. So what really killed, at the end of the day, killed that idea were Facebook fan pages. And Facebook fan pages were this, hey, we can have a free social network, right, for our communities. But what Facebook fan pages were a one-to-many distribution. Now, residents could talk to each other in the comments, kind of, but it really was community to residents interaction. Whereas to facilitate a real sense of community, to get those ties between residents, they have to feel like they're communicating with each other. So I think that the potential for something like that using technology still exists. The question is how to moderate it, how to make sure that it doesn't turn negative, that, hey, if you have a challenge, let's talk about it in the office. Let's make this a positive and happy place. So I think there's some interesting ways to use AI maybe to moderate and sense a tone within a sentiment within those posts that are made, and then figure out a way to have that loop in the on-site team to see what's being posted, and let's take this offline, whatever the case may be. So there's some really cool opportunities still in that space from my history that still, I don't know if they've really gotten the kinks worked out. But there's still a lot of work to be done to make sure it's a safe environment and an environment that will not turn negative.
My wife is in a mom's group in her building, and some of the stuff that gets said there shouldn't be said in this group. So I agree with you. It needs to be moderated. Sometimes some people get energetic and excited, and they end up saying things out of anger. But yeah, I think it's a great way for people to have that community and have that place where they can communicate with each other. When we had our newborn, my wife ran out of diapers. She asked the group chat. Someone brought her diapers in front of our door. I mean, it's amazing. But yeah, sometimes you just need to have that control.
And the reality is it opens up the world of the community because so I guess in my history, I was in Texas. And so a lot of them were garden style communities. I knew the sum of the people I knew were the 6 or 8, in that stairwell, if I happened to run into them. That's a really low, if you're talking about odds of finding somebody who you're going to connect with, I mean, your odds are really low at that point. If you can take a 250 unit community and think about all the people that are there and the vibrant personalities, there's going to be somebody who is like that. They could have been my best friend, but there was no way for me to, logistically find that person in a realistic way. So it really does open up the world to finding people outside of the normal, structure of human interaction.
Yeah, I live in Boston, and while I live in a brownstone that is not a larger multifamily community, I am a member of many group text chats and whatnot based on various interests. The biggest one is the dog group, right? I'm in the dog owner group, right? And we use it for that same thing. I'm feeling sick today. Can somebody come by and walk my dog or whatever that may be? And it's that sense of curated community, so to speak. But Ryan, I'm interested in what the AI report would be on the sentiment of Daniela's mom group. Reading those messages.
It kind of gets rated R, though.
I'm sure it does. I'm sure it does. I'd like to sign up for that. But anyway, Brent, how can apartment owners use data to personalize the resident experience and boost retention? And are you familiar with any platforms that are doing that today?
Okay, you're gonna have to forgive me. I'm gonna go on my probably decade-long soapbox for a moment.
We love a soapbox. This is CRE Unplugged.
Yeah, bring it.
Get up there.
So for years, I have been asking every access control company that I've run across whether they use the data to monitor is not the right word because it sounds very kind of like you're tracking people, but
Sure.
The reality is who's using the pool, who's using the gym, both from a granular resident level and also from a global perspective. So you can understand the effectiveness of different amenities to either repurpose them or possibly give them a nudge if you need to have like more gym programs, for example. There is so much data that is out there that is not being leveraged. Now, I've heard rumblings now that this is finally maybe coming. But for the longest time, we'd have all this data about what people possibly maybe using, but then we also have data on the front end of their experience. So when they come into the community, they tour, we have a guest card, and oftentimes we're asking them, what are you looking for in an apartment community? And they're telling us exactly why, what they care about. And we take them on a tour and we show them the gym and the pool and all these things. And we should be able to gauge, okay, they really seem to like the gym. Like this is a major motivator for them. And yet we do nothing with that data. Generally speaking, I'm sure there's tons of companies out there, so I'm sure that's not a complete statement. But and then what happens historically would be we would put the same standard form letter of a renewal notice on their door, and that was it. Like we totally forgot that they care about the gym. Like that meant nothing to us anymore after they moved in. Drove me crazy because with access control, you can see whether they use the gym or not. You can see that tie-in with their interests and their desires and like there are very few scenarios. If you go buy shoes, you don't know why they're buying the shoes. And there's no way to understand whether they actually, use the shoes in different ways. Did they go running? Did they go play basketball? Whatever, right? We have this unique opportunity. And I don't think there are privacy questions where you have to be careful, where you don't want to know that April is using the gym every single night at 9 p.m. Definitely concerns, okay? And also, there's concerns where you don't really want to enter the apartment sphere, like, how they are actually using their specific apartment. There's a privacy issue there. But I think when it comes to like overall usage of the community as a whole, I think that there's great ways to remarket our own services, our own amenities to them, or customize the resident's experience based upon how they're using it. So Netflix, for example, will absolutely customize my experience based upon what I'm watching. They'll show me stuff that they think I'm going to like, right? I don't think it's a stretch to say that we could do something similar with how they're using the community as a whole. And so there's so many really cool things you can do on this front and positively impact the resident experience and also then the renewal process at the end. And so I'm hoping that's not another decade for me to be asking these questions to find out when we're actually seeing some meaningful inroads on this front.
What's your theory on why the industry has not taken action on this yet?
I don't want to go too cynical, but okay, so when rent increases are strong,
Mhm.
you think about low-hanging fruit, right? It's the low-hanging fruit is like, hey, we can get rent increases. It's easy money. I mean, think about a couple of years ago when we were having just
Yeah.
massive rent increases. Do you really care about resident, renewal rates? I
No.
mean, we can get somebody in here with $100 increase per month. I mean, like that's not what people were really looking at. And that's sad to say because, our customers, we should be caring about them at all times, whether or not we have rent increases or not. And then there's a whole other conversation about you can probably have your cake and eat it too when it comes to rent increases and low turnover. But what really happens is we don't necessarily, our focus kind of can shift away on us
Mhm.
from that resident experience to some degree. So I think that at times like this, when we've had kind of stagnant rents for a while, although that's probably going to change significantly in 2025 and going forward. But you start seeing people care more about the resident experience
Mm.
and so then more focus on it. So I think it's partly just how the industry runs as far as our marketing department is the primary department in a lot of these companies. It's not the resident retention department, right? It is the how do we find more residents, because we always need to find more residents no matter what, because there's going to be people moving out. So I think it's just how our companies are structured to some degree.
I find it fascinating that you're talking about retention and the experience for on the multifamily side when so much is being talked about right now on the office side, how to get people back to the office. You're actually talking about, why don't we keep the tenants that we have on? How can we keep them engaged? How can we keep them happy? And I guess that's not something that's a hot topic, but I'm so happy that you're bringing it up here.
I think to certain groups it absolutely is. And I think that people in generally know, like, I think it's like I would love to have my residents be super happy and want to stay. And I think that is an authentic, real reaction for most people in the industry. I think multifamily gets a bad rep in that I think most people truly care about the residents and truly care about providing a great experience to them. So, and it's not always portrayed in the media that way, and it's really sad because there's going to be bad operators who make the industry look bad. But in my experience, multifamily is filled with the most amazing people. I mean, I am truly blessed to have stumbled my way into this industry because of how many incredible people there are who are passionate about their jobs. That said, though, I still do think though that you know our motivations can get, shifted slightly, where we could be focused on one thing and when we're always still focused on getting new people in because there is no way to get 100% retention. It's not possible. So we always need marketing. So
Mhm.
then I think that is kind of why we end up shifting our focus a little more towards marketing because it will always be a need no matter what, if that makes sense.
Mhm. Mhm. I'm happy to
Yeah.
hear that.
Yeah, going back to the innovation side, what do you think of how tech is going to be look like in the multifamily space in the next 5 years? Are there any emerging trends or developments that excite you?
So, there are so many things happening right now. AI is interesting. It drives me crazy when people talk about AI in a very general sense. Like AI is specific to the challenges in which it is trying to solve, or the
Mm.
opportunity is trying to create. It is not, in my sense, it's not something we talk about AI. We talk about AI in specific use cases and how we modify, adapt, or improve a process that we're trying to do. But there are so many of those that are really exciting. This is actually is a little bit of a shift in that. So my associate Felicia Norman, she went to PropTech Connect in London a few weeks ago, and she was telling me how it was interesting how that the difference in types of companies was dramatically different. There was so much more climate tech in Europe. I'm assuming because of regulations, although I don't know that market well enough to really say for sure. But uh, I personally get really excited about that sort of thing. When you think about different technologies on that space, and I'm hoping that I hope that rises more in the US. Although it's a challenge right now, I think we've kind of plateaued a bit to some degree as far as the, you know, the American public's interest in climate, issues. But I think that that's something that's really fascinating. Like this is single family, not multifamily. And actually, it could be multifamily too. I just haven't seen it applied here, where they pressurize the building and then they put particulates into the air, and then because it's pressurized, they go and find the holes throughout the building and then plug up and create this really, tight building. I think that is absolutely fascinating. So things like that really get me going. And so I'm hoping to see more of that in 5 years. That's more of a hope of mine, not necessarily what I think is going to happen. I mean, I think 5 years from now is like a world away. There's no way to determine what's going to happen in 5 years from now, given the pace of change.
Speaking
we could start seeing robots coming to lobbies of multifamily buildings and being concierge service.
Heard some interesting stories about holograms. When we talk about centralization and pulling team members away from the on-site team, well, replace them with holograms. And so you have somebody there, but they're kind of, rotating remotely in the hologram. That's fascinating. Yeah. And then hearing stories about construction sites being monitored by robotic dog things, I think is really interesting. Yeah, there's some really cool stuff out there.
That's already happening at a project here in Boston,
Oh, yeah?
South Station Tower, which is a residential tower being constructed above South Station train station. I believe that is a Heinz building, and Suffolk Construction, I think. And Suffolk, if I have that wrong, please forgive me. They have a robotic dog on site that is going around with a camera, right, and is used for various tasks, which I agree with, is utterly fascinating. Utterly fascinating.
I mean, I have to admit, I'm a little disappointed that they don't have like lasers or something, but I'll get past it. It'll be okay. But yeah. I mean, imagine if you're on you're breaking into a construction site and there's like a pack of robotic dogs. Like, I mean, my goodness, how intimidating must that be at that point?
I'm gonna be scared shitless if that happens. And
yeah.
Like seriously. And I'm a dog person, but I don't know about robotic dogs. So but anyway, speaking of the next 5 years in the future and whatnot, Brent, everybody now wants to know how they can future-proof themselves, right? Whether that's an individual worker in the industry or, owners and operators on the commercial side. So tell me, in your own words, how can multifamily operators ensure that they themselves remain future-proof amidst all of the fast-paced evolution of technology we're seeing these days?
I mean, I think it's, to a large degree, it's impossible to future-proof. I mean, things are always changing. I think what I would recommend to companies is move forward, even slowly at first, to start the process of developing a change management culture in your company, to implement something, to understand what the process of implementation is, the process of evaluation, gain that institutional knowledge as you're starting that process, and then you'll get stronger with that, and then you can be more, as time goes on, more and more aggressive with building the tech stack. And then at that point, it's a reevaluation timeline on every piece of the tech stack. Like over so long a period of time, this needs to get tweaked and rethought through. There's no future proofing them. I mean, I wouldn't say that would ever exist. It's just a matter of future proofing. Really is developing processes to those processes become, I mean, they evolve too, but at least you can, they become your future proof, to understand how to then evaluate and adapt and then reimagine down the road a given piece and really rethink about whether it's working for you or not.
Would it be safe to say, so you speak of processes, right? Would it be safe to say, and I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but adopting an innovative mindset, right? In culturally could assist companies, again, not to be future proof, but processes that invite curiosity, right? That invite innovation and that invite asking what if, right? Or what if we did this? So would it be safe to say that perhaps could aid a company in traversing?
Yeah, and I think that is from the very top to the very bottom.
Oh yeah.
I think, the challenge that, going back to the challenges of a tech adoption, when you think about who's going to these, tech conferences, it's not the property managers, and yet they're the ones who are dealing with it, right? Like they're the ones who are implementing and have the ramifications of this being thrust upon them. If you get people to have a stake in the game and see the build excitement from that way of, oh, that would be so neat, and actually have it a way that where if they're involved, hopefully the goal is then to take things off of their plate, create less burdens. If we're doing it on their behalf without their involvement, then we're not thinking about how this is going to negatively impact them. We're only thinking about the positives. Oh, wouldn't it be cool if it did this, this, and this? But the reality is you add this, this, and this, but you're also going to add these negatives too, possibly, right? And so they need to be stakeholders, they need to be involved, and they need to get excited and be supported in that excitement. So yes, the innovation mindset needs to be across the board, but because they feel like they're a part of the process rather than just something that's mandated upon them.
Preach, Brent Williams. And you're reminding me of when I led onboarding and implementation at Lease Pilot. The most successful implementations were those where that was communicated from the top down before we even began the implementation. And the more friction-laden implementations were those where it wasn't, because the end users weren't prepared, right? They were the ones bearing the ultimate burden of the implementation itself and they didn't have a voice. They didn't really feel like the stakeholders in it. And those were the ones that were more difficult. So preach, Brent Williams, preach.
Everyone needs to have buy-in. You need to create that incentive for them. I 100% agree with you, Brent. Let's now get to your personal side. We have a very curious audience. Can you tell them what you do to unplug?
I'm not totally sure if I know what the word unplug means. So if we can have a definition there, no. But I like the little things. Like I just started being kind of an assistant coach to my son's soccer team, and I love that. I think it's so much fun to kind of seeing where they are both doing really well and to kind of maximize that and encourage them, and then also see areas where hey, how can they improve? And I think that's fun. I love residential architecture. It's huge. Like, so we went on an East Coast trip several years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, and we hit like the Biltmore, hit Falling Water, the Breakers, all these just unbelievable historical houses. We went on the West Coast this past summer. We went to Hearst Castle and the Remington Mansion. So I find so much joy in seeing these grand mansions, or even they don't have to be huge, but ones that are done really well and create a sense of home. So I just love that stuff.
Ryan's going to Asheville this weekend. Are you going to go to the Biltmore?
Yeah, that's part of our plan. Yeah.
Love
Very
it.
cool.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, love
Brent,
that. Is that your first time?
Yeah, it'll be my first time there. I'm very excited.
Amazing.
Yeah, hiking and all that good stuff. But Brent, I wanted to say, if you love architecture, I highly recommend you going to Barcelona. I studied abroad there, and some of the buildings that were built there back then are just unbelievable, and I think you'll get a real kick out of seeing everything.
Yeah, I've heard the mix of styles. Was it the Reconquista, I think, where it's like you have all these different these cultures have mixed over the centuries, have created some really interesting, unique places.
No,
yeah, put that on your travel list.
Definitely.
We are going to wrap it up with a question that I love. Brent, how would you advise our audience members who want to build a community like yours, and what key insights can you share with them?
So I think that the biggest thing, is cultivation and finding the people who are passionate and giving them a voice in a spotlight. The biggest portion of my job is really just spotlighting amazing people, ideas, companies. So it's not really about, me coming on this, this podcast with you all is one of the few times where it's like I tell my story. Really, it's like 99% of the time, it's me finding other people and trying to make them shine. And by doing so, every single person, no matter how green they are, in fact, when they're super green, sometimes they have very unique stories because they're coming at it from a different perspective that we're not used to. And so it is a joy to find all these great voices throughout the country and even abroad, and letting them shine and really helping them share their stories. So that's the biggest piece of creating a vibrant community, in my opinion.
I love that. I love that.
Brent, I want to say how great it is that you've created this community, but also how you've highlighted the tech industry and you're bringing tech and innovation to the forefront. And I just love to see that, because we need more of people like Brent out there to really showcase what's really going on in the industry and how can people be more educated and involved into how to integrate and adopt technology. So I really want to commend you for that.
It's my pleasure. I enjoy it. And you know what? The more tech forward multifamily jumps into, the more chaos there is. There's so much out there, and it's hard for people to get their arms around it. So anything that we can do to calm the chaos, make order of everything, who's doing what, how does it fit together? That's a huge thing that our industry needs. So I really enjoy that.
Thank you, Brent Williams. If our audience members want to get in touch with you or find out more about Multifamily Insiders, where can they go?
So multifamilyinsiders.com is our primary platform. We also have a group and company on LinkedIn. They're both called Multifamily Insiders. Actually, one might be called Multifamily Insiders Community, but if you look on LinkedIn, you can find that there. We also have a multifamily share space group on Facebook. It's more about on-site discussions. It is fascinating. Even if you're not on site, there are no filters in that group. I mean, it is really interesting to hear how people how they voice the challenges of working on site, because it is not easy to work on site with all those personalities and dealing with something so emotional as someone's home. It's a real fun place to join as well.
Will you be going to any conferences for the rest of the year?
Yeah. So I will be at OpTech. I'm not sure our plan there as far as, sometimes I go just as media. So I just cover the conferences and report back on what trends we're seeing. So yeah, OpTech, and I think that may be my last event of the year. And then our first event for next year in February will be Multifamily Demo Day, which is going to be virtual. So people can join that as well. Excellent.
Well, Brent Williams, thank you so much for joining us today on CRE Unplugged, and for your insights and for your passion for the multifamily community. So thank you very much.
My pleasure. This has been a joy. I've really enjoyed it. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. We appreciate you so much. And be sure to stay tuned for our recap after this word from our sponsor.
Hey there, CRE Unplugged fam. We would like to give a huge shout out to our sponsor, the Game Changers over at Hilo, the customer experience platform for buildings that's turning heads in the real estate world.
That's right. Can we talk about how Hilo is transforming the way we manage properties and create unforgettable experiences? Ryan, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when you think about Hilo?
Well, Nadine, it's all about reducing friction in property management. Hilo is like the magic wand that makes everything seamless and efficient. Say goodbye to those time-consuming tasks and hello to streamlined operations and communications.
Efficiency is crucial, but what about personalized experiences? Hilo takes it to the next level with a vision to tailor each interaction to the needs and preferences of its customers.
And let's not forget the community aspect. Hilo builds vibrant, connected communities. It's fostering a sense of belonging and togetherness.
Now, here's something that truly sets Hilo apart: their commitment to advancing ESG initiatives. They're not just about buildings, they're about making a positive impact on the environment. That's a win-win for everyone.
So, to our listeners out there, if you're ready to elevate your properties, digitize and enhance customer experience, and maximize satisfaction, Hilo is the answer. Please visit hiloapp.com for more information. That's HILOAPP.com. Well, that was a wealth of information that we just got from Brent. I got a lot from what he said on the multifamily side, about the community side. I really loved his thoughts and perspectives. Nadine, what did you think about this, considering that you don't have the experience on the multifamily sector? So really like to hear what you thought about all that.
I learned a lot from Brent. Plus, he's such a great guy, and
Yeah.
what I really appreciated is, we spent a lot of time talking about the commercial side of it. That's where a lot of my own experience comes from, but there's so many parallels between the multifamily side and the commercial side as well. As we're seeing, and you made such a great point in the episode, where we're seeing now with office owners really focusing now on how to create community, the types of community that are going to bring people back into the office. This is something that multifamily's been focusing on for a while now, right? But, on the resident side, on the tech side as well, a lot of similar parallels. So for me, historically, I've always kind of had the two sectors separate in my mind, and it was really enlightening for me to draw how many parallels there really are. So I really appreciated that from Brent. He's so good at it.
Yeah, I think everything that he puts on Multifamily Insiders is such great information. And I really, going back to the 2024 technology adoption report, that's such great insights, because you're really getting a survey of what tech is being instituted among the different platforms that are out there in the different sectors of the multifamily space. So anyone that is interested, I would definitely check that out. But it really got me thinking about the supplier and vendor side and the early stage startups. How can they get out there? Because here's the thing: real estate is a relationship business. We went to Blueprint. More people were connecting than actually, learning about the vendors. Unfortunately, they wanted to hear the people speak. So how can you approach those people who you want to reach out to? How can you get yourself out there? Because I think that's really important, because there's a lot of competition. You got to find ways to separate yourself, right? So I mean, I think pilots work to a point, but you really need to have a strong go-to-market strategy. I think what you also need is to create testimonial reels to get people who are using your platform to go on and talk about how effective it is for them, how it's working for them. Because if you're not hearing that, I don't really think owners are going to gravitate towards that. Because another point that I would like to make: you have a lot of these legacy owners, and we talked about this with Bob Gillespie,
Right.
and and you got this one and done approach.
Yeah.
They're against instituting tech. And if they end up incorporating a platform that doesn't work for them, that's it. They're done. They're not gonna want to use it again, unfortunately. So it's a word of mouth game. So if you can't have someone vouch for you and say, this is what we're putting into our business, you should look into that. The next best way is to try to create these testimonial reels, because at the end of the day, people really want to hear from actual users and get their insights and perspectives. I think that's really
absolutely. Yeah, we used to do case studies. You want to hear from people that are using it, right? But I think I totally agree with all that. But I think even before you get to that, you need to have a product that is solving an actual problem, right? What is an actual problem that the industry is experiencing today, right? And you and I see so much tech that's out there now just for the sake of tech, right? Just for the sake of innovation. These owners and operators don't have time for that, for all of the reasons that you just stated and that we hear time and time again from everybody that we talk to. And Lisa Picard was talking about this as well back on her episode, right? Find a problem and solve it. Find something that's going to give quick NOI, quick returns to the owners and operators, make the onboarding experience seamless, right? Create that relational sense, that relationship between you as a vendor and the end users. And I have to say, one of the biggest things that's going to go very far for you as a vendor is the ability to exercise empathy towards your end users and these owners and operators. And in order for you to get that empathy, you really need to understand the problem, right? And if you don't, everything else is just going to be bells and whistles, and you're going to have a very hard time connecting with your end users. So find a true problem to solve. Empathize with that problem. Figure out who the personas are, who are your end users, and use that to build a true relationship. Because you and I see this all the time. Owners and operators, they're going to see right through that if it's not something that's genuine or if it's not a true problem.
Eating just as you were saying that, I was thinking about when Airbnb, Joe Grebbia, he was on how I built this, and he talked about when Airbnb first started, when they got accepted to the accelerator program with Y Combinator.
Yeah.
The first thing the heads of Y Combinator said to them is, "Hey, did you go and talk to your customers?" And they're like, "No, our customers in New York. We're in San Francisco." It's like, "No, you actually now need to go to New York
Exactly.
and talk to your customers and find out why their photos are blurry, how you can get them to get their, to get customers to go and rent their space or Airbnb their space." And guess what? They, everything from there skyrocketed, and they're now